Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1158, 1158, June the 11th, 2020, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, well it looks like President Trump has announced his first rally. That's right, his first comeback rally. Looks like it's going to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma here in about 10 days. Fantastic. That's what Trump needs. You know, he's been cooped up there in the Oval Office putting up with a lot of crap. He really needs to get out there and rub elbows with the folks. And they're looking very much forward to it. And after Oklahoma, it looks like he'll be heading to some events in Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina. So what's going to be hilarious about this is how triggered this is going to, how triggered the Democrats in Congress, how triggered the leftists in the media, and just leftists in general on Twitter and various other social media, how triggered these people are going to be when they see Trump in a large rally with thousands and thousands of people. It's going to be absolutely hilarious. And it's going to be total meltdown time. And I'll be looking forward to watching, you know, as much as the Trump rally is going to be great, you just know that. It's going to be the response from the leftists when they melt down after being triggered by the rally. That's going to be the real fun thing to pay attention to. So we'll be watching that very closely. Very happy he's getting back out there. And it's also a very good political move because it kind of forces Joe Biden into making a move. What they would really like is to keep Joe Biden in the basement and let the media run the campaign for him and try to let you know, the leftist big tech media do his politicking for him and just keep him hidden. And by Trump coming out and doing rallies, it's going to force Biden's hand. He's going to be forced to come out and start doing public appearances himself. And that's when things usually go off the rails for quid pro quo Joe. So it's a very good political tactic in a lot of respects, and I'm very happy to see it. It's about time, because the hoax is over. The hoax is over. If people can go out and riot by the thousands and thousands in the streets, then we can get together and have a rally and throw a little party if we'd like and do anything else we want. Now, let's get to some other really important news. In a recent release of FBI documents, apparently there was some FBI documents, by the way, that were released this past Friday. I didn't even know about it. But in a recent release of FBI documents related to the Right Reverend Clinton's emails, a series of emails has been discovered between Jake Sullivan and Ben Rhodes. Of course, Sullivan is a national security advisor to the Biden campaign, and Rhodes was Obama's deputy assistant national security advisor, right under Susan Rice. Now, in this email, we have Sullivan telling Rhodes, quote, "We're only lying foot soldiers. You're lying masterminds. That's cooler." And then Rhodes responds by saying, "Well, at least you're only a liar. Could be worse. We're liars and also allegedly leakers. So you've got that going for you, which is something." Now keep in mind, these emails were sent before the 2012 election and shortly after the 9/11 attacks in Benghazi. So what do you think that they're talking about lying about? And making fun, laughing about it. And if you remember, Ben Rhodes was also one of the people making jokes, laughing about how they lied to everybody to get Obamacare. So I imagine there's much more to come. But these are, you know, these people are exactly what we believe they are. I mean, we know what they are. We know they're liars. We know they're communists. We know they're crooked as hell. We know their agenda. We know they're all in on the coup. And this is all going to come out. And it's coming out a little bit at a time. And this will continue to happen. And these people are going to be exposed. I would say there'll be more to come, particularly from Ben Rhodes, because he was under Susan Rice. He is going to fall under the microscope, if he has not already, in the Durham investigation. So we'll continue to watch. But there you go. Rhodes and Sullivan admitting that they're liars, making jokes about it. And then you have Rhodes telling Sullivan that not only are they liars, that they are alleged leakers. Well, they're not just alleged leakers, they were leakers. Lots and lots of leaks. And of course now we have Jeff Jensen investigating those leaks. And the last task that was assigned to him, the Flynn case, he handled it magnificently. In about 2 months, he got to the bottom of it. So, yes indeed, the truth is coming out and justice is coming for these rats. And again, when you look at the time frame when these emails, when they're making these jokes, this was just before the 2012 election. And of course, that would have been right about the time, just after the Benghazi attacks on 9/11. And I think that this is what they're referring to when they're talking about the lying. So this just tells you, I mean, how nasty these people are. They didn't give a damn about the 4 people who were killed in Benghazi, or about the condition that they left Libya in after Obama left office. They don't care. These are total political animals with a political agenda. And that's all you need to know about these people. They don't, there's no principles with these people. There's no law. I mean, to these people, the ends justify the means. Laws be damned. That's how they think. And I think there's going to be a lot more coming out on Mr. Rhodes, whose testimony I have not had a chance to read yet, but I will. Well, we also learned yesterday from John Sullivan that Nunes and the House Republicans on the Intelligence Committee are now in the process of sending over at least 10 new criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. These referrals are for issues related to the Michael Flynn case, crimes committed during the Crossfire hurricane investigation, false testimony to Congress, and criminal leaks of classified information. So, I don't know how many criminal referrals this is now that Barr has received from Nunes, but it's now well over 24. And we have to assume that Attorney General Barr is going to seriously look at this stuff and probably pass it on to Durham or whoever's working that particular part of the case. Remember, you now have Durham, and he's got this RICO lawyer from New York, prosecutor from New York, who's a specialist in RICO. You've got Jeff Jensen looking into the leaking that was going on. You've got John Bash, the U.S. attorney from Texas. And again, as I said about 3 or 4 days ago, you notice how Barr and Durham are pulling these U.S. attorneys and prosecutors out of the Republicans. They're pulling Republicans who are way outside of the District of Criminals. They're not working within the FBI, the DOJ, and D.C. They're pulling these U.S. attorneys and prosecutors out of Missouri, out of Texas, out of upstate New York. And so it's a very wise move by Barr and Durham. And I expect that they'll look at these criminal referrals, and they're likely everything that Nunes is referring here they probably are already aware of. It's just more weight to the case, you might say. And there might be some new information here that Nunes' committee has that Durham's team has not looked at, or has looked at but didn't maybe passed over it. So we don't know exactly what that is, but we do know it's headed over to Attorney General Barr. It will make its way to Durham and be dispersed accordingly. So that's good news to hear. And Nunes says that this is just the first tranche of these that he's sending out, these first 10 or so. He expects that there'll be more in the next coming weeks. And he said every time that there's new releases of information, that it generates new evidence, which ends up resulting in more criminal referrals. Now we're still waiting to find out who the subsource was for Christopher Steele, the primary subsource, and for some reason, Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz did not want to name that person, and they have not wanted to come off that name. Now, obviously, Durham knows who that is. Barr knows who that is. The people investigating that case know who this is. But still, Congress and the American people have not been let in as to who this is. And Grinnell never released it. As far as I know at this point, Ratcliffe has no plans on releasing that. So it must be something pretty sensitive and to Durham's investigation. But it also has to be something very, very damning. Now, at this point, most of us believe, unless there's something I don't know, that the description of Subsource 1 seems to perfectly fit Sergei Milian. So, it appears that Sergei Milian is the primary subsource. But, there are other people out there who have questions and maybe don't believe it is Milian. Some people think it's Deripaska. It may be Deripaska, it's possible. But it could also be someone else that we don't even know about. But it could also turn out to be someone within the Clinton orbit, like a Cody Shear or someone like that. Who knows? But whoever it is someone who they absolutely, the FBI, no Sherlock Ray, does not want us to know about. It is someone that obviously Bill Barr doesn't want to release, because he obviously knows at this point exactly who it is. So does Durham, because there's quite a few people who do know within the Department of Justice and the FBI. But they're withholding that from us at this time, and there's obviously a reason for that on both sides, on the Durham side and also on the Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray side, that they do not want us to know. And that tells us that when we finally do learn that, and I'm sure we will be learning that before long, it's probably going to be one of those major bombs, because otherwise, we've learned the names of all these other people, but that name is being tightly held on to by everyone in the know. And there's a reason for that. And I think we're going to find out why. But it's bad. And of course, Chuck Ross writing a story on that over in the Daily Caller yesterday. And he doesn't offer any clues, and he doesn't even speculate. But, when I look at the description of subsource, primary subsource, it seems to pretty closely meet the description of Milian, but there could be many people who meet that description. The only thing is it does say that the person has spent some time in the U.S., and that may mean it's not Milian, because he doesn't just spend time in the U.S. He's actually been a U.S. citizen for 15 years, more than that actually. So I don't know, who knows? But we're going to find out, and it's going to be something very bombshell. And I don't think we have that much longer to wait. Now, we have Undercover Huber, reporting that DNI, John Ratcliffe, has just declassified, and this just came up 1 hour ago on Undercover Huber's feed on his Twitter channel. He's reporting that DNI, John Ratcliffe, has just declassified documents related to Russiagate, and he's ordered them to be sent to Congress, so expect a big release imminently. Which means probably within the next 1 or 2 days, I would say. So Ratcliffe has now declassified a bunch of documents related to Russiagate. He's having them sent over to the Congress, and I expect that they will be released shortly. More good news. Now, John Solomon is also writing about the document release that occurred on Friday, which I didn't even know about. But John Solomon says newly released emails and notes that had been kept from congressional investigations show that the FBI knew from the earliest interactions with Christopher Steele. That would be his first interaction, is what he's referring to, which was the one he had on July the 5th of 2016, the same day the Rotten Reverend Clinton is exonerated by Jimmy the Weasel Comey. Christopher Steele meets with Mike Gaeta over in Rome, Italy. And in that meeting, Gaeta learns from Chrissy Steele that he is working for the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. That information was, in fact, forwarded over to several people, including Peter's been stroking us. In fact, Strzok was advised, remember the meeting occurs on July the 5th, Gaeta learns from Steele that he is working for the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC. Strzok was advised of this on July the 13th, which would have been, what, 8 days later, 7 days later, something like that. Also, another agent in counterintelligence at the FBI was advised on August the 2nd of 2016. Also, Case Agent 1 was advised by 2 different sources of the exact same information on July the 13th of 2016. They knew it was the rotten Reverend Clinton. And what do you have James Comey saying in his testimony? Even when he was on Bret Baier, long after being fired from the FBI. And Bret Baier asked him, and he says, well, I still don't know for sure who paid for the dossier. What a lying son of a bitch. Now we know that, now, maybe Comey's going to say, well, no one told him. In which case, you're going to have McCabe and Strzok. And, I mean, every one of these guys cannot go testify to Durham or to a grand jury or to in a court somewhere or to Congress or in a media interview. They cannot, all of them can't say they didn't know, right? Somebody had to know. We know for sure that Peter's been stroking us knew. We know for sure that case agent number 1 knew. And we also know that another agent in counterintelligence at the FBI also knew. All 3 were told very early on, right after that July 5th meeting. So the FBI did know very early on, as early as July the 5th, that Chrissy Steele was working for the rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC. They knew it from day one. Day one. And do you think that information didn't get from Peter's been stroking us to McCabe, to Priestap, and that didn't find its way to Comey and Obama and all the rest? Of course they knew. They knew it all. Every one of these people are dirty as hell, man. Well, it's kind of funny. I said a couple of days ago we hadn't heard anything about Bernie, Commie Bernie coming out and giving his thoughts on abolishing the police and everything that's going on. So he finally did come out yesterday and make a statement that he was against abolishing the police. Now, that's not going to make him very happy because a lot of these leftist Antifa people are also Bernie bros. You know, they don't love Bernie. He's not 100% what they want, but he's the closest thing that they can get, right? So they were happy to try to ride in on Bernie's coattails, and then hopefully once, in their dreams, Bernie would become president, and then they could further radicalize him or get away with a lot more than they do now. So there you go, Bernie coming out now against abolishing the police. Well, yeah, almost all the Democrats now are coming out, if they have any sense in their head, against that. But, as far as I know, AOC and Omar and a couple others are still, riding that horse. And I think it's definitely going to affect them in the re-election. Like I said, I think the biggest surprise that may be coming in the 2020 elections here in November may be how many changes that we see and how many things that we see go down in local elections. I think local elections, both the coronavirus and these riots, both of these events, I think are going to cause a lot of people to pay much, much closer attention to their local government and their state government than they normally would. Normally, an election year, presidential election year, people are always thinking about the president, and they're thinking about members of Congress, the Senate, whatever. And they just sort of check mark and rubber stamp party line for city officials or state officials. But I think in this particular case, because of these two events and the strong positions that have been taken on both sides by Republican governors, mayors, by Democrat mayors and governors, I think that there's going to be, I think we're going to see something really big happen with local elections that we haven't seen in quite some time, because these two issues have been very local. A lot of the decisions that have been made by local mayors, governors, and things like that. So I think we're going to see something very, very interesting here in these 2020 elections here this fall as it relates to the local politics. I'd say that's the place to look if you want to see some real shocking things that I believe are probably going to happen as a result of the fact that that's the government that's most local to people. And for all those people who had their businesses destroyed, are seeing their property values drop, have been victims of the violence, victims of the looting. They see their communities being destroyed. They see calls for local liberal Democrat officials wanting to disband the police, defund the police. These issues are really going to play in November in 2020. And I would say that's really a place where I think we could see a major sea change, I guess you would say. Now, one other political thing, and then I want to get back onto another topic regarding the Rodenstein testimony. Now, Biden's campaign director, James Clyburn, is now saying that there was no violence, looting, riots, or arson, or police attacks in Washington, D.C. last weekend. There was no violence, looting, riots, or arson, or police attacks in Washington, D.C. last week, according to Clyburn. My oh my. And they also talk about the plan. They're very open about the plan, that they're running for the Biden campaign. And the plan is to keep Biden in the basement. And this is coming directly from Terry McAuliffe. Keep Biden in the basement. Let the media and big tech construct the campaign. That's their strategy. That's not going to work. No, I mean, you're running for president of the United States. You got to get out. You got to get out. You got to meet people. You got to do rallies. You got to do campaign stops. You got to raise money. You got to do all these things. And now that Trump is going to go back out on the campaign trail and start his rallies again, it's going to put tremendous pressure on Biden. It's going to force him out of the basement. And so that campaign strategy just went right out the window. Now, I want to draw your attention to a couple things. First is something I've been hearing since the Rodenstein testimony, where people are saying, yeah, Rodenstein really threw the FBI under the bus. And, I mean, in a sense, you could say he threw the FBI under the bus, but I don't really think that Rodenstein was trying to throw the FBI under the bus. It looked like to me he was doing his best not to, but it looked like what he was most concerned with was covering his own ass. That's what Rodenstein was doing, was covering his butt. And those in his circle, his inner circle, who are all involved as well, the DOJ side. If he really wanted to throw Comey and McCabe and the FBI people under the bus, he could have done a lot more to do that. You had to drag it out of him just to get him to admit that McCabe wasn't straight with him. And he really wouldn't even come out and say that McCabe lied to him, despite the fact that he has lied. So I don't believe that Rodenstein really threw the FBI under the bus, and if it was his intention to do so, he could have done a lot better. I think he was just covering his butt. And in doing so, he has no choice but to, force with, a question of, did you know this stuff? Did McCabe inform you of this stuff? He has no choice but to say, well, and I think he's lying, by the way, to say, no, I wasn't aware of all this exculpatory evidence. I wasn't aware of the January 4th FBI decision to drop the case on Flynn. I wasn't aware that the dossier had been proven to be a hoax. I wasn't aware of any of this stuff. Well, in that case, de facto, McCabe's lying to you. He really doesn't, it wasn't like he was necessarily throwing the FBI under the bus. He was covering his butt. And the de facto position is, by covering his butt, by saying he didn't know about all these things, the de facto result of that is that he wasn't told by McCabe, who was running the show, along with Peter's been stroking us, Lisa Page, Priestap, and some of the others in that group, Pienka, Soma, and all those people. So I don't totally buy into the fact that Rodenstein necessarily threw the FBI under the bus. They were like a casualty. They were like collateral damage from Rodenstein covering his own butt. And again, as I've said before, I believe the man was lying about most of his testimony, quite honestly. But I want to draw your attention to testimony that Rodenstein gave previously back in December of 2017. Now, you may remember those hearings. They got pretty feisty. A couple members of Congress got pretty feisty. If you remember, that's when I think it was Louis Gohmert, kind of had a meltdown. I think it was Jim Jordan, Ratcliffe. I mean, there was quite a few people who got under Rodenstein's skin. If you remember, he showed a real arrogance, and you really got to see kind of how Rodenstein really is. He's an arrogant prick, and that was evident. But I want to go back to something he said in December of 2017. Rodenstein, in his testimony in December of 2017, stated that he was getting detailed consults with Mueller, but he now says in his most recent testimony that he had no idea the FBI was advised to drop the Flynn investigation. So, and he also talked about the fact that he had appointed this team of a group, I believe he called them, to be like intermediaries between him and the Mueller team. And so let's think about what he said back in December 2017. He testified that he was getting detailed consults with Mueller. Now, it's a little blurry here. Is he saying that he personally was getting, because he didn't say personally here, but you assume when he makes a statement that says, I was getting detailed consults with Mueller, you assume he's talking about himself. But he could be talking about the fact that he had this group of a handful of people who were acting as intermediaries, that they were getting the stuff from Mueller and then giving it to him. So this needs to be cleared up by Ron Johnson when he calls Rodenstein in to testify. He needs to clear up that point. Were you having direct consults with Mueller, or are you talking about this team of people that you assigned to become the intermediaries between you and Mueller? And if so, who were those people? Because we need to talk to those people to find out what Mueller was telling them. Because clearly what Rodenstein is saying is that clearly he was not informed about the dossier being a hoax, about Flynn being cleared back on January 4th, and all the other things. So he says he was getting detailed consults with Mueller. But he now says that he had no idea that the FBI was advised dropping the Flynn investigation. So what he's actually telling us here is that Mueller, or Mueller's team with Wise-Ass and the crew, or this group of people he assigned to be intermediaries, were not truthful with him. Somebody was lying. Now, let's just look at the principles. He says, I was getting detailed consults with Mueller. Does that mean he's saying that he was getting this information directly from Mueller? Or was his group that he appointed getting it from Wise-Ass and a couple of people on the Mueller team? That needs to be cleared up and aired out. And I really wish it would have been followed up on in his hearings. After he said it, it was let go. He just kind of let him off the hook, because that's a crucial pivot point here. Because clearly what he's saying, regardless of whether it was he and Mueller directly, or he and Weissman, or his group and Mueller, or his group and Weissman, or whatever combination you want to think of, the bottom line is that what he's saying is that he was having regular, detailed consults with Mueller throughout this time. And keep in mind, Rodenstein admits that in August of 2017, he knew that the whole Russian collusion thing was debunked. Yet he allowed Mueller to continue on for 17 more months. What he's saying here, and this goes beyond the FBI. People say threw the FBI under the bus. Well, yeah, there were 40 FBI agents working on Mueller's team, but Mueller's running the show now. This is the Mueller investigation. So he's basically saying, and it was Mueller that went after Flynn and Papadopoulos and Carter Page and tried to go after others as well. Roger Stone, the whole 9 yards. That all happened under Mueller. So what he's saying is that essentially the information that he should have gotten that he did not get as he's overseeing the Mueller investigation happened during the time that Mueller was running the special counsel and that Rodenstein was supervising him. And Rodenstein's essentially saying, hey, they didn't tell me about all this stuff. Well, he's talking about the Mueller team. And people say, well, he kind of threw the FBI under the bus. Well, kinda. But he's really throwing the Mueller team under the bus. He's talking about the Mueller team. I mean, he comes in to office. A few weeks later, he appoints Mueller. And at that point, Mueller takes over Crossfire and Hurricane, which was, at the time, a counterintelligence operation, which suddenly morphs itself into a criminal investigation. How does that happen? With no evidence, other than what was falsified, which Rodenstein says he knew nothing about. Despite the fact that he tells us back in December 2017 that he was having regular consults with the Mueller team, getting detailed information. He said here yesterday in the hearing, act like, well, I kind of read through the through the FISA warrant, so I didn't read every page, but I had a pretty good idea what was in it. Yeah, but previously you testified that you were getting detailed information. You were having regular consults and getting detailed information. So either you were having regular consults and getting detailed information, or you were not. And if you were, then clearly you weren't being given the real stuff, the truth. You were being given something else. And that's why they need to drill down and find out specifically what he meant. Did he mean he was meeting directly with Mueller? Was he meeting with Wiseman? Was it him, or was it his little crew he put together? There's a lot of airing out that needs to be done. And again, when you look at this in context with the emails that I read to you from Rodenstein, where he's talking to all kinds of people about what a big deal this all is. So the idea that this was not a big deal to Rodenstein, or that he wasn't really involved in this up to his eyeballs, is bullshit. Read his freaking emails. They tell you everything about his state of mind and about his attitude about what was happening. It wasn't laissez-faire. He was up on the bit, on every bit of this stuff. Said in the hearings the other day, I had no idea of the evidence that cast doubts on the Flynn investigation. Well, if he had no idea of the evidence that cast doubts on the Flynn investigation, but back in December 2017 he said that he was getting detailed consults with Mueller, that's a problem. That means in these detailed consults, one of two things. Either he was, as he said, getting detailed consults, and he's lying about the fact that he wasn't brought into the evidence of, the dossier being bullshit and Flynn being exonerated, or he's telling the truth, and that means that someone on the Mueller team or his people were lying to him, or maybe the Mueller team was lying to his people. You see, you need to get to the bottom of that. It's left hanging out there, and someone, Mr. Johnson, Ron Johnson, needs to drill down on that point. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.